you have to have what I call an entrepreneurial mindset. And the entrepreneurial mindset, there are 4 words that come to mind when I think about an entrepreneurial mindset. And those of you who made it through this program have, I believe, at least the foundation of these 4 words. Number 1, passion. Number 2, you need to be resilient. Number 3, strategic. And number 4 is thoughtful. And that's what I consider to be an entrepreneurial mindset. Next slide, please. So here are a few lessons that I've learned along the way. As you heard, I've been CEO of both NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange companies, and I'm now an investor in probably about 50 different companies. And I launched Business Rockstars, which we just sold in December, as a very narcissistic way for me to meet cool companies to invest in. But I've been a serial entrepreneur, or as I like to say, an entrepreneur, for my entire life. Next slide, please. Here are a few of the lessons that I've learned. Number 1, you need to know your strengths and weaknesses. This is such a crucial point for any entrepreneur or startup. My first public company was a startup, and that was the radio network that Brian mentioned. And my competition, ABC, NBC, CBS, and this little company that I founded, this startup called Premier. And one of the things that I did right in the beginning, and trust me, I made a lot of mistakes, was to surround myself with people who had expertise in areas that I didn't have. And I think that's one of the hardest things for entrepreneurs to do, is to recognize your own strengths and weaknesses. And I'll give you a good example of where I recognized, a weakness that I had. We were already public. We went public on NASDAQ. And we had an inquiry from an investment group that was headed by Michael Milken. And they reached out after we were already public, and they wanted to invest 30 million into our company. And Michael said, I'd like to spend an hour and meet with you and tell you why we would be great strategic partners for your company. And I spent 1 hour with Mike Milken, and he said at the end of that hour, what can I do for you that would help bring value to your company? And I said, well, our competition is ABC, NBC, CBS. Fox does not have a radio network. So if you could line us up with an investment or a strategic relationship with News Corp, that would be amazing. And the next day I got a call from the president of News Corp who wanted to have a meeting with me. Now, here's where I recognized my weakness. For me to negotiate with Michael Milken and News Corp, even though I thought I was a pretty smart guy, I had a billionaire who was a mentor of mine. And the way I got a billionaire as an investor is that I gave him first rights to buy my business if and when I ever decided to sell it. Now, he was also in the broadcast business, and he sold his company for $2.1 billion before he had an opportunity to buy my company. But I called him up and I said, hey, look, I'm going to go into a negotiation with Michael Milken and News Corp, and I want to know if you will represent me. Why? Because I knew my strengths and I knew my weaknesses. And I thought, if I can get a billionaire in to represent me, to negotiate with Milken and News Corp, I think that's going to pay off. Now, he agreed to do it. He said, look, I'm not an investment banker, but I will do this for you because I think it would be fun sport to negotiate with Michael Milken, and you're going to pay me $250,000 for 1 week's work, which I did. And at the end of the day, he saved us close to $5 million based on the structure of the deal. So know your strengths and weaknesses. And by the way, when it was announced that News Corp was becoming an investor in the company, our stock ran from $6 to $18. And I more than covered that 250,000. Next slide, please. 10,000 hour rule. I don't know how many of you are doing this out of passion or because you have expertise in the area that you're in. But one thing I can tell you is if you have the 10,000 hour rule, and there's a whole book on this, which means you have 10,000 hours in the field that you are in, there is a high degree of likelihood, a much higher degree of likelihood that you will succeed. So the more expertise you have in your area, the greater the likelihood of success. Next slide, please. You know, a lot of people make the mistake of launching a business and then going, we're going to go here, I'm going to launch this vertical, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. You know, when I started my first public company, what we did with my company was we focused on one thing first. And we did that better than anybody. And then you broaden from there. Greatest example of that is Jeff Bezos. Bezos started off launching a bookstore, you know, and he built the largest bookstore in the world online. Then he started to add verticals. So I would caution you to do too much too early on. Focus on one thing. Small success goes a long way in helping to build credibility and in helping you to have wins to take it to the next level. Next, please. Think outside the box. God, this is so important. My favorite entrepreneur is Elon Musk, and that guy is totally outside of the box. So if you're going to compete in today's marketplace, you need to be creative or find somebody who can bring creativity to your organization. You need to have a unique value proposition. Is Tesla just another car? Well, when they launched, they were an electric car, which was thinking outside of the box and a unique value proposition. But Musk has built so much around outside of the box mentality, and the market cap of that company is insane. And he's now the most, you know, the wealthiest person in the world. So try to create unique value propositions as you grow your company. Next slide. Ego. Boy, I have seen more great deals go by the wayside, you know, because of ego. Do not let your ego get in the way of good business. You know, it's so critical for you to be able to understand, again, where your strengths and weaknesses are, and not to get bogged down by a decision that you made that maybe is a bad decision. You know, understand your ego and do not let it stand in the way of good business. Next. Hitting a brick wall. Failure as an entrepreneur in a startup is really something that is important to understand, because you will all fail. I have failed numerous times along the way of building what became the largest radio network in the United States, competing against huge competitors. I failed so many times along the way, and I have failed so many times in business. But you need to be able to understand that as you fail and as you hit a brick wall, you need to try to find a way through that wall, over that wall, or around that wall. You know, failure is a part of business. And one of the most important things about failure is learning the lessons of failure. Next slide. All right, so I'm going to go through these quick. This has to do with failure. Henry Ford, his first few businesses failed, left him broke and in debt before founding Ford. Next. Bill Gates, Harvard dropout. His first business was called Trafo Data. And by the way, that didn't last very long. Next. Walt Disney, at the age of 22, he was fired from a Missouri newspaper for not being creative enough. Next. Due to poor grades, Steven Spielberg was rejected from the University of Southern California 3 times. Now it has his name on the side of the building. Next. Oprah Winfrey became one of the highest ranking shows in American history, according to CNN. Her first boss told her she was too emotional and she wasn't right for television. Next. Michael Jordan. And this is a great quote for entrepreneurs. Michael Jordan said, "I have missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that's why I succeed." So to the graduating class, congratulations. You're at the beginning of a great journey, and I wish you all the best.
Steve, thank you so much. That was fantastic. Such great advice, and I love